So good evening, my name is Allison Fay with the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. We're a program of Gunderson National Child Protection Training Center. We're going to be offering the Teachable Safety Skills class tonight. It's also being recorded for parents to watch at home. We're going to go through a lot of information in a short period of time, so don't hesitate to ask questions or ask me to slow down if I go too fast. We want to start with thanking you all for being here and reminding you that it's a kid's job to be a kid, and it's a grown-up's job to keep them safe. And what I mean by that is we should not put personal safety on the shoulders of a 6-year-old. Or an 11-year-old. You know, it's a child's job to explore beyond the driveway, and it's the parent's job to know where they are and why. And we see a lot of different, you know, we do want to make sure that we harden the target and talk to young people about personal safety, but it's not their job to keep themselves safe. It's the parent's job to have this information. And the other issue is if I go into a kindergarten class and talk to them about their bodies on a Monday, I'll be really lucky if they still retain it on a Wednesday. They need repetition. That's why in kindergarten, you know, today's letter is J. Next week, today's letter is J a few weeks later. And now we're talking about J again. You know, it's the same idea. And when we're talking about bodies, we don't expect, if I go on a Monday, for them to retain it for very long. It's still important that they hear those messages, because there might be a child in the class who hasn't heard that their body is their own and they have the right to say no to grown-ups. But it's also more important for adults to have this information and make it lifelong. You may have heard of the Jacob Wetterling case, which is what was the impetus for the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. Jacob Wetterling was abducted 25 years ago yesterday, October 22nd, 1989. And as a result of him going missing, his parents started a nonprofit organization to help prevent this from ever happening again and to help advocate for parents who are in crisis, whether it's a question about sexual abuse prevention, whether it's a child runs away from home. Our hotline, which is 1-800-325-HOPE, handles a large range of calls, everything from a child concerned because someone is messing with her on an online game to a parent who's concerned because their child was taken away. And so we work with families of missing and exploited children as well as trying to get on the front end and prevent. So when we started, we originally worked to prevent abductions and abuse, but that message has grown. We talk a lot about what a healthy relationship looks like if we don't want to grow any more offenders. We talk about what healthy is. You know, the idea, can anyone think of a current reality television program that if a child is 12 and doesn't have a model in their house of what healthy looks like, that you could say, well, this is how to resolve conflict with the person that you like without yelling at them or putting them down. You know, so we struggle in really highlighting what is healthy for kids who don't see it in their own homes. Online exploitation is an issue. Just to put sort of to age myself, when I go into the high schools and talk, I tell them that I got my first email account my senior year of high school. And the kids are like, wow, your parents were so strict. It's like, no, that's when it was invented, right? I mean, that's just how quickly the internet has moved from it just in my own lifetime. I didn't have my first cell phone until I was done with college. And the idea of how these instant tools are in children's hands and the part of their brain that says, is this a good idea? Isn't developed yet. And so we see a lot of issues with sexting, with cyberbullying, and with obviously kids are at risk for sexual abuse, and it's all connected. So we want to get on the front end to educate, to prevent. Just some reference, we are a program of the Gunderson National Child Protection Training Center. It's an agency that works to prevent all types of child abuse through education, training, and prevention. We merged with them several years ago, and recently, or within the last 2 years, have merged with Gunderson Health System in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And the reason that healthcare facilities are getting involved in child abuse prevention is due to the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. In 1998, this was first done in San Diego, where there was a doctor who was working on a weight loss trial and found that there was a group of people that when they were becoming successful in their weight loss, they would drop out of the clinical trial. He was wondering what was common and what was, you know, why they would drop out, and he went and did interviews, and he found out that the people who were dropping out had childhood trauma and were using food as a way to cope. And so then when you take the food away, what do I have to cope? And so, you know, he was wondering, well, what other childhood trauma, how else could childhood trauma impact adult health? So he made a list of different adverse childhood experiences, everything like watching a parent be battered, being forced out of your home, being physically abused, you know, and had a chart. And every time that someone had a score of 1, if something had happened to them once, if they had ran away from home once, that would be a score of 1. If they witnessed, you know, physical abuse or battering 4 times, it'd be a score of 1, whenever they experienced one of the columns. And he found that patients who had 6 or more of these adverse childhood experiences are dying 20 years earlier than a patient with a score of 0. And also that when they studied the health charts and did behavioral histories of 17,000 adult patients, they found that these adverse childhood experiences had a strong correlation with obesity, cancer, liver disease, heart disease, smoking, alcoholism, and depression. So the fact that what happens to us as children, some people think, oh, well, children are resilient. What happens to our hearts when we're kids affects our hearts for the rest of our lives. And so we want to help prevent child abuse, both to raise healthy adults and to raise healthy families, which is why hospitals are now getting involved, as is Gundersen. So the number one question I get when I teach this class is, how do I teach sexual abuse prevention to my child without scaring them to death, right? Which is a completely valid question. And we know that fear will freeze people, but if we have enough education, that moves us to action. So we want to make sure that we keep this upbeat, positive, but we also get rid of the fear, because we don't want this to be a scary topic. We want this to be upbeat, positive, and accessible. And the first way that we do that is we focus on the relationship. We focus on the behavior. And so we look at the fact that only 7% of sexual abuse is by people unknown to the family. And even in our non-family abductions, which is the rarest type of missing child cases, almost all of them are committed by someone the child knows. So that whole idea about, is this someone you know? Is it someone you don't know? Should I talk to people I know? Should I talk to people I don't know? It's people already in our circle that are the problem in most cases. And as I said, most children are abducted by someone that they know. It's often a friend or a long-term acquaintance, neighbors, people in authority, caretakers. We look at the fact that we have about 58,000 non-family abductions in the SMART study that studies these things, and of those, 115 were stereotypical kidnappings, where the child was taken by someone they didn't know, moved a certain distance. The high risk, the non-family, the ones that get the media attention, about 115 of those a year. But the bigger picture are people that they are not related to, but they likely know and are putting them at great risk. And so we want to get on the front end of this problem by teaching differently. Yes.
What's the time period?
That was 1 year.
That was 1 year.
That was 1 year, yes. And the good news is the National Center for Missing Exploited Children has been around for 30 years. They do amazing work. Their recovery rate is 97.5%. So they're able to find these young people. They do a very good job. Tons of new tools, new trainings, new laws, new policies. So that's helpful, but we still have a long way to go when it comes to prevention, because that's after the fact, finding the child. We want to prevent the child from ever being missing in the first place. And so the first thing we do is we focus on the behavior of the person. We don't teach, don't talk to people you don't know and things like that, because youth have an image in their head of what a stranger looks like. If the person doesn't match that image, they're not going to connect to that safety rule. It's mixed messages if we say don't talk to people you don't know, and then the first day of school, the social worker, the teacher, the bus driver, everybody are people that you don't know. We want kids to know how to ask for help. A child who's separated, at Valley Fair and is standing there frozen, waiting for someone to approach them, may not be a safe adult who approaches them. But if they've been taught, for example, all right, I've been taught to not go anywhere with anyone, and flag down a mom with kids and say, hey, I'm lost, can you call my dad? Here's his number. Those kids who are taught that most grown-ups want them to be safe, and to seek someone out, they're going to be in a better place than those that are frozen. Because kids and teens are much more likely to be victimized by people they know, we teach 2 different safety questions. Does this person try to get me to break my safety rules, and is this person giving me an uh-oh feeling? If the answer is yes to either of them, we take 2 steps away from that person. Because it's hard to think and it's hard to move when someone's in our bubble. So if you're with your friend and your friend says, it's okay to steal candy from this store, and your uh-oh feeling starts to go off, that's a safety rule. Oh, we don't steal. You take 2 steps back before you do anything, just so you have some room to think and to move and to breathe. And then the goal is to say no in a clear voice, go find a grown-up and talk to them about it. Now, we know that in many of our cases, kids don't say no in a loud, clear voice because they're freaked out or overwhelmed. So we say, even if you don't say no, still come and tell me about that when someone's trying to get you to break your rules, because I want to make sure that we can keep you safe the next time. And so does this person try to get me to break my rules? And is this person giving me an uh-oh feeling? So it doesn't matter if it's the neighbor next door, if it's a relative, or someone coming out of an alley in a trench coat. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. If they're asking us to do something that we know we shouldn't do, like we check first before we get in a car with anyone. So if someone's trying to force us to get in their car, it doesn't matter who they are. We know the safety rule is, nope, I don't go into a car with anyone until I check first. So I'm going to take my 2 steps back, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to go find the person taking care of me. Does that shift make sense for folks? Okay. And that gut instinct, Gavin DeBecker wrote an amazing book for parents called Protecting the Gift. But he talks about to listen to your intuition means listening to yourself. We'll sometimes get calls on our hotline of things like, I just switched child care providers, and now the new person that I have is, my child is regressing and they're bedwetting, they're clingy, they're crying. Do you sell those like teddy bears with the hidden cameras in it so we can put it in the nursery and see what's going on when I'm not home? And if you're getting a feeling in your gut instinct that something's wrong with an adult or an older person that you're leaving your child with, or an older kid, don't have your child be the guinea pig while you play detective. You don't need to have a logical reason to say, you know what, I'm not going to leave my child alone with this person. With this person, I'm going to make sure I'm always around them, because my uh-oh feeling goes off around them. I have that gut instinct feeling. And it's important, the same safety rules parents have told us that have helped for generations still help today, even online. Engaging, knowing who your child likes to spend time with and why. If we look at that on the internet, what sites do they like to go to? Where do they like to play? Look at the history, sit down with your child, have them show you. In the same way that you engage, whose house are you going over today? I'm going to go into their living room and meet the parents. It's the same thing with online friends. To double check, go through the friends list every so often and ask who different people are. Who's this person? Oh, okay, well, she's in soccer with me, and she's never asked me to break a rule, and we get along really well. Okay, who's this guy? Oh, well, he gives me my roller skates when I go ice skating, or roller skating. I don't know him very well, but, and then it's that question of, well, why would a 25-year-old want to be friends with a 12-year-old? And that makes me feel uncomfortable, so let's talk about that person. How does that person make you feel? Has there ever been anything odd happening there? And consequences. Empathy, teaching kids to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Kids who've been taught to walk a mile in someone else's shoes are less likely to steal those shoes. If we're talking about doing no harm, we need to talk to our young people about respect and about, even my friend, with her 2-year-old, gentle, that idea of teaching young people about others deserving to be safe. When it comes to the internet, that empathy piece is hard because the kids don't see them face to face. And if you hurt someone's feeling face to face, you see their face crumple. It's a very different feeling than when you're not having that instant feedback. And then the last thing is consequences. If you screw up online, if you screw up in real life, if we have a consequence, it's not going to become a pattern. So to not be afraid of giving consequences to young people. We don't want to tune out children as they enter their preteen years. One of the great things about ECFE is that parents can share stories. Listen, my 4-year-old's a biter, and I don't want him to be the biter in kindergarten. What are you doing to prevent him from biting, right? And I'll see that on my own Facebook news feed with my 4-year-old is doing this, and what suggestions will their parents have? I don't see a lot of my 14-year-old's experimenting with marijuana. What other parents of 14-year-olds are doing that, and how can we, because there's that sort of shame, and you don't want to vilify your kid, and people sort of stop talking the older kids get. We want to make sure parents still have that support as kids get older. We know 11 to 17-year-olds are at great risk comparatively to other generations. Why do you think 11 to 17-year-olds are targeted so often? They're the most victimized population in the United States. Let me ask this. Who here wants to relive junior high? So picture your junior high self. Your junior high self, what could have made you a target for an offender, either online or in real life?
I think they want acknowledgement. They want friends. They want to be accepted.
Yeah, that's huge. Peer acceptance is huge at that. If your friend jumped off a bridge, would you? It's like, well, which friend? Who's going to be there? Are they videotaping it for Vine? Let's be real. Give me the context. So peer pressure is huge. What else could make people at risk in those years? Yeah. Attention and affection is what our young people need to thrive. But that's the number one strategy that's used against them, is attention and affection. Other ideas about this age? Yeah, it's that combination. One of my junior high students says, well, it's that combination between we think we know everything, and then when it turns out we don't want to let anyone know that we don't. You know? It's like, I got this. Then someone's messing with you, and you're like, oh, I don't got this, but I don't want to tell anyone that I don't have this because I just said I have this, and I don't want to look like an idiot. You know, so there's that piece. The logic, I mean, the part of their brain that's learning how to form arguments is what's developing, and that's going to contradict their gut. You know, a 5-year-old who sees a rustle in trees and something coming towards it, a 5-year-old's going to look to get out of there. A 14-year-old's like, if I leave, everyone's going to wonder why I'm freaking out, why I'm overreacting. So let me walk up to the tree and stick my head inside the tree. When I figure out what it is that's freaking me out, then I'll get out of here, right? We see that with our teenagers all the time. It's like, oh, this tastes gross, come taste it. And the average adult's like, no, I'm good. And the junior, oh, it tastes gross, let me try, you know. And so it's that idea about going against their gut instinct because their logic is trying to teach them to contradict their gut. I was speaking recently to high schoolers, and I was asking them informally on their way out of the room, what did you learn today? One of the boys was like, well, I learned to ignore my stupid brain and listen to my smart gut. I was like, I didn't tell you your brain was stupid. It just catches up later. You know, your gut moves faster when it comes to safety. Other ideas? I mean, there's hormones during these years, body changes, feeling like no one gets you. There's a lot more access to the internet. There's a lot more access to people outside what they've considered to be, you know, their circle. A lot of risk taking. And so we need to make sure that the big piece with the teenage brain is it's not done yet. You know, it ends around 22. And the part of the brain that says, if I do this today, how will this affect me tomorrow? That's the last part of the brain to develop. Right? But yet we hand them a tool that says, how are you feeling right now? Let us know. You know, click send. Tell us exactly how you're feeling. The part of the brain that stops and pauses isn't quite done yet. And so they're working against biology and all those hormones and all those insecurities. And what we say is every kid should have 5 adults they can talk to about a problem. Now, when they're little, it's all kinds of adorable. So I'll go into a kindergarten, they'll say, who are your 5 adults? I have 10, Allison. Well, I have 14. I have 18 adults that care about me, you know, and they get really excited. And I go into a junior high classroom, I said, if someone sent you a nude picture of themselves, who would be 5 adults that you could talk to about that and flag for them and get some help? Define adult. Well, their brains have to be done, you know, so they have to be over 22. Oh. And then they get stuck. Because they're so into the helping each other out, which is a great friend, you know, thing to have. And young people can solve a lot of their own problems. But if someone's being hurt or is threatening to hurt themselves or threatening to hurt someone else, we need to get adults involved. And those 5 adults can be so helpful. Because some of the brochures will say stuff like, if your child stops eating, has difficulty concentrating, starts slamming doors, it means they've been sexually abused. Or it means they turned 14. You know? And if you have those 5 adults who say, you know what, you're not telling me what's going on, but I love you, I care about you, I want to make sure you're okay. Aunt Mary's one of your 5. Why don't you and your aunt go out and get some hot chocolate, figure out what's going on, she can support you in that. Because sometimes there's a lot of power by having the message of safety not come from a parent. You know? It's like I was a youth minister for years, and every January was Sex Ed Month at the church that I worked at, and parents would call and say, you're saying the exact same things I've said, but now when you're coming home, they're saying, Allison said, and now it's like has a whole new level of truth versus what the parents have been saying. And it's like sometimes you just need other people to give that message. If parents are saying, you know, you really, this is a site, I don't want you visiting because of what I've read about it, I don't like that, it makes me uncomfortable. Like, oh, my parents are overreacting. Then one of your 5 says, no, really, this particular site, just I can't see anything good about it. That can help give backbone. So those 5 adults are even more important as the young people get older. We also need to remind ourselves that they are adolescents. And Dr. Walsh wrote a book called Why Do They Act That Way? Dr. David Walsh, all about the teenage brain. And he talks about the fact that it's not, we shouldn't be too surprised if teenagers make mistakes, but it's the parents' job to convert mistakes into learning opportunities by making sure kids deal with the consequences. My mom used to tell my brothers and I growing up, she's like, I just pray if you guys do anything wrong, you get caught and punished right away. Like, that's the worst, Mom. What are you doing, right? But her argument was, well, if you steal a candy bar and you get caught and you get punished, you have to pay it back, you're not going to grow up to steal a car. And so sometimes the little consequences, if you're hurting someone's feelings with your phone, and so your phone gets taken away for a week to remind yourselves that people have feelings on the other side of the screen, you may not grow up to get into an even bigger situation, you know, in a zero tolerance school. People have the sense that the lures of missing children involve, you know, lost puppies and candy and ice cream trucks. And we do have a few of those cases, but most of our cases, by far, are related to attention and affection, what we were just talking about. And looking at our young people who are targeted by offenders on the internet, they're primarily 13 to 15-year-old girls, and half the victims describe themselves as being in love with or having close bonds with the offender. And so if they need that attention and affection to thrive, that there are your 5 adults again. And we say 5 because sometimes the first person they tell doesn't know how to help them. And sometimes the first person they tell is the one causing the trouble. And so we want that safety net of 5. So if it's someone on your list of 5 who's asking you to break your rules and to keep secrets from your parents and do things that you feel like are wrong, you have 4 more. Because we know offenders are looking for positions of power and authority amongst kids. And to be able to say, no one loves you, but I love you. No one cares about you, but I care about you. You and I have this special secret relationship. And if a child has that net of 5, where they say, I love you unconditionally, and it's not, I will love you if, their red flag will go up a little bit quicker when someone says, I will love you if you send me this picture. I will love you if you keep a secret. Because they have this net of people who love them for who they are. But this attention, affection, the case for me, or the example for me that just stuck was I was at a conference and someone talked about how one of our clients would find his child victims, and he would pick up his kids from elementary school and watch the other parents pick up their kids. And the parents who got out of the car and said, well, show me your class hamster. What are you guys singing in choir? He'd leave those kids alone. The parents who drove up blasting loud music, the kids jumped in the back seat, they peeled away with no connection, no conversation. He would say, invite those kids over to play. Invite those kids over for a sleepover. And he was just trying to screen what kids were in need of his attention and affection. And so we can't blame kids when they fall for these traps because offenders are good at what they do. So if they're good at what they do, we have to be better. So not only who are your child's 5 adults, but who are 5 children in your life you can be a positive adult for? Whether that's an official mentoring program, whether that's informal, you know, but to help create that net. One of the parents of a missing child talked about the fact that her 14-year-old was sexually abused when a sex offender attended their church. And we have to keep in mind faith communities are very easy targets for offenders, so faith communities have to work harder at hardening those targets because it's a very trusting community, and it's traditionally not a place where people have been trained or screened. So in this case, they communicated online secretly. My daughter was lonely, and so he felt like it was this great addition to her life. Years later, she blamed herself for she didn't tell anyone, and years later she revealed she blamed herself for the abuse because she was molested only after she snuck out of the house to meet her friend. And so because she broke the first rule, it's like the offenders will say, with me you can drink alcohol, with me you can do drugs, with me you can watch porn. And then the child doesn't want to say anything because if they say anything about that, you know, the other stuff's going to come forward. We know most kids don't disclose. Why is that? And there's like 30 reasons. So what are some of the reasons that kids don't tell if someone has violated their sexual boundaries? Fear of getting in trouble. Why did they pick me? Why was I, something's wrong with me, and my parents are going to be really upset when they find out that this happened, and especially if the offender said, you're just as much at fault as I am. You know, they have that fear that's their fault.
I think fear of harm to their family.
Yep, sometimes the offender has threatened a family or dogs or cats or any of those kinds of things. And if he or she did this to me, what could they do to my animals? I mean, there's that fear. Feeling shame. I mean, it's one of those things where, why was I targeted? Why was I picked? What's wrong with me? So there's that layer. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why kids don't tell. Sometimes it's they don't know who to tell. Sometimes they don't even know it was abuse, depending on their age and what they've learned about their body. You know, they're not going to tell if they don't realize that it's something they should be telling. And it's that idea about, you know, she felt like in this case she was to blame because she snuck out of the house to meet him. It's not her fault, but from what he said, from what she's internalized, she believes that it is. So it's for parents to early on have conversations about, you know what, you're allowed to say no to grown-ups or older kids, or even kids your own age who are trying to get you to do something that breaks your rules, but always come and let me know about it if you say no. If someone does something that makes you feel scared or confused, you have my permission to say no and come and tell me. But even if you don't say no, because it's someone you like, and it's someone that's, if it's mom's boyfriend or dad's girlfriend or dad's boyfriend or mom's girlfriend, whoever it happens to be, if it's someone that they like, it's hard to say no to someone that you like and someone in your family, and how's this gonna change everything if I say something? So to have the conversation early on, no one has the right to hurt you. If someone does, please let me know so we can work together to make sure that you are safe and it's never the kid's fault. And one way we talk about having this conversation is with a family safety night. The beginning and end of every school year, get together and let's talk safety. And one way that we do it is after we go through and we have a safety rule list, the Empower Me list, but after you teach each rule, follow it up with some what ifs. And so that to make sure the kid really gets it. And no distractions, you go over all things safety. What's our fire escape plan in our house? Let's unplug the phone, practice calling 911. And while we're talking safety, let's talk about how we use the internet safely. Let's talk about our personal body safety. So that if they have questions, they can come to you and seek you out in this very structured sort of, we're going to talk about all things safety, so it's not the elephant in the room, but it's addressed ongoing. Oops. And so if it's uncomfortable for you to have this conversation, let your children know that, because they can read discomfort in a lot of different ways. So say, this is something that makes me feel really awkward to talk about, but your safety is so important, we need to do it anyway, so I apologize if this feels uncomfortable, but your safety is so important, we need to have this conversation. And as I said before, what if games are so helpful. With young ones, they really need the what ifs in that actual moment. What if right now at the store we get separated? What are our rules again? Let's review. Teenagers can obviously extrapolate more with what ifs. What if you're at a party and you see this happening to somebody else? How could you help? So that what if is helpful, and the what ifs should be ongoing. Okay, our family safety rule is adults ask other adults for help. So if an adult asks you for help, that's something you have to check first on. So what do you do if someone comes up to you and says, I've lost my puppy? Well, adults ask other adults for help, so I always take 2 steps away from someone asking me to do something to break my rules, so I have room to move and room to think. Then I'd say, I have to check first, and I'd come and find you. Great. Let's, and then you reinforce that, and then a week or 2 later, you're like, well, what if you're at the park and it's a lost cat? Oh, I'd totally help. I love cats. All right, let's review the what if. That's what it's there for. Let's talk about it again, because, using those teachable moments and using repetition. Identify who the 5 trusted adults are, keep it upbeat and positive, and it's not the talk. Parents say, at what age do I have the talk? We say you should start talking about this stuff as soon as your child's old enough to be a potential victim, which is at any age. But see how, and we have teachable safety, personal safety rules at different ages is one of our booklets. But, if your 6-year-old just is not getting the check first rule, work on the check first rule before you move on to the next thing. And different kids, different reasons. And with kids with special needs, it can be very difficult. My cousin who has special needs does not have an uh-oh feeling around people. Who do you want to invite to your birthday party? I want to invite the bus driver and the janitor, and, her best friends. And that's great that she's very connected to the people, in her school who might not traditionally be connected to kids. But the idea of she would definitely need a lot more supervision because she doesn't have that uh-oh feeling when someone's asking her to break her rules. So we have to sort of cater the what ifs to each child. And the personal safety rules that we go through are here, and they're also on the Empower Me handout. We check first before we go to a car or house of somebody, when they're giving us a gift, when they want to take our picture, or when we change our plans. Again, it's a kid's job to be a kid, so if the rule is, okay, I check first before I go in a car with someone, if someone pulls up and is trying to make me get in their car, no, I have to check first. I can't do that. If someone drives up and says, oh, I'm a friend of your family, your mom wants me to bring you to swimming lessons, I got to check first. And you can start moving away right away. I got to check first and go and find somebody to make sure that's okay. We use the buddy system. It's a little harder when you're 11 to 17 because sometimes those buddies can be the ones saying, let's go jump off a bridge. So within context, but there is safety in numbers. Listening to your gut. No secrets. Now, I used to say there's never a good reason to keep a secret from the person taking care of you. I've had to adapt that a little bit because a little boy was like, so my mom's turning 40 next week. My dad is planning a really big surprise party for her. Is he asking me to break a rule? And it's like, no. So we teach now the difference between secrets and surprises. And surprises are things that would make us really happy, and we're all going to find out really soon. Those are okay. And if we're not sure if it's a secret or a surprise, find one of our 5 and ask them. Have a family password, which is a come pick me up, no questions asked password. Mothers Against Drunk Driving started that when kids would need a sober ride home, and it was before texting. You have to go and use the family phone and ask. And so it's just a family password saying, I'm in over my head, come get me, I need to get out of here. Adults ask other adults for help, and private parts are different from the rest of your body. So we don't go anywhere with anyone who won't let us check first. And that covers the people that we know, which is more likely the case, and the people we don't know. Kids should be taught they're more important than their stuff. If all they hear is, don't lose your backpack, don't lose your backpack, what if you do, don't lose your backpack, and someone's grabbing at their backpack, what do? You leave your backpack and you go the other way. Or if you're a teenager, you throw your car keys one way and go the other way. Making noise is a good thing. We yell for help, we don't scream. We yell from our gut. The same part of our body that's telling us that something's wrong is where we yell from. Yelling things like call 911. Because if parents hear screaming, or they think someone's playing a great game of freeze tag, if they hear someone yelling call 911, they're going to come out of their house. And find an adult to help you. Most grown-ups want kids to grow up safe and strong. If a child at random picks a grown-up and says, can you help me, their odds that this is someone who wants them to grow up and safe and strong are very, very high. And so we have to teach kids that it's okay to ask for help. And it's a good thing to ask for help if someone's trying to get you to break your rules. If you're walking home from school and someone is trying to get you to get in their car, you go into the nearest gas station and stand by the counter and say, someone's trying to get me in their car. Can you call my mom? Can you call my dad? Can you call the person taking care of me? So seek out adults to help you. The tricky thing is bystander science says the more people who are watching a crime committed, the less likely someone helps, just because they're wondering who's going to do something. In a big room, if someone comes in and steals the laptop and runs out, science says we'll all be looking at each other saying, who's going to handle that? If there are 2 of us in here, or a smaller group, and someone steals the laptop, one of us is running after them and getting a license plate, one is making the phone call, we know it's on us. And so we tell older kids to point at someone and say, can you call 911? Give that ownership to somebody so there's not that hesitation. With little kids, they can actually physically grab on to one of the bystanders. Because if they are on somebody's leg, it's going to be really hard to get that person to get into a car. And that most grown-ups want you to be safe. And if you're not sure if this is something you should help with or not, and there's a crying child on your leg, guess what? You're now engaged to getting that person some help. And we talk about touches. Kids should know the proper names of their private parts. The little girl who's been taught that her vagina is called a purse is not going to be able to get help from a teacher when she goes and says, an older kid on the playground keeps messing with my purse. It's like, well, don't bring it to school, right? And then we see that in so many of our cases where they've been taught a euphemism, and the other of the 5 adults doesn't know that euphemism, and they don't know what that child needs. So to be taught the actual correct name so that they can ask for that help. Kids should be taught that private parts are different from the rest of their body. The parts of your body covered by your swimsuit are your private parts. You have the right to say no to anyone asking them to do something against a rule or against their uh-oh feeling. And we don't have anyone touch our private parts, and we don't touch anyone else's private parts unless they're keeping us clean and healthy. Like at a doctor's office, or showering, or bathing, or diapering, things like that. And if it's a clean and healthy touch, we can always ask questions about it. No clean and healthy touch is ever a secret. And so clean and healthy touches, if we're not sure, with young ones, we say talk to an adult. If anyone tries to touch or look at your private parts or wants you to touch or look at your private parts, and if it's a clean and healthy touch like at the doctor's office, use that as a teachable moment. So you know that usually we don't have people touch our private parts because they're a different part of our body. They're private. The only time that someone would ever need to do that is to keep you clean and healthy. We're going to go to the doctor and they're going to make sure that you're healthy, so they might be touching your private parts. Do you want me in the room with you? Do you want a nurse in the room with you? Let's make this plan so that you feel safe and that you can always talk about it, because we want to make sure that you get the difference. Questions about that? How we frame that for people? With older ones, we talk about the fact it isn't your fault if you get tricked into a scary or confusing touch. And it's okay to tell even a long time after it happened. Because kids who've been taught, I'm going to say no and I'm going to get away. If they don't say no, can I still tell? And so we remind them, it's not your fault. We don't say bad touch because most sexual touch feels good. And so if you're 14, your body is responding, is that bad or is that good? Like, it's confusing. And also, kids who've been touched in a bad way are less likely to tell if they have that context of, oh, I did something bad. So we just say, we talk about touches. No touch should be a secret, and if it's a healthy clean touch, you can ask any question you want about it. And I'm always convinced I've heard every question, and I go to school and I hear something new, and I'm always ready. I was at a school in the third grade, I was talking about this part, and this third grade girl is doing a lot of this, and that's not usually a part of the conversation where I get a lot of this, and I was like, okay, the social worker's here. Yep, what's your question? She's like, well, I was playing at my friend's house, and a bee stung my butt. My friend's dad pulled it out. Was that okay? I'm like, great, let's use that as an example. So did that feel clean and healthy that was taken out? Well, yeah, because it really hurt. He came and just grabbed it right up there, and then it felt much better. Okay, were you allowed to talk about it? Yeah, he put an ice pack on it, and he called my mom and said that this had happened. She came pick me up. They had a conversation about it. She brought me home. It was not a secret. Okay, so it's a great example of a clean and healthy touch, but you weren't sure, so you asked about it. So if you're not sure, please ask, and we can talk about it. We should teach kids that no is a complete sentence. You don't need to use the word because after the word no when we're talking about our body. And that's harder for those 12 to 17-year-olds of like, oh, but I really like him and he's trying to make me do something that I don't feel comfortable, or she's asking me to send her something that I don't think I should send her. When we're talking about our body and our limits, no is a complete sentence. I'm going to skip, this is for a bit older. Okay. We want to get trusted adults involved if someone's being hurt. Teach your kids the difference between telling and tattling. Telling is saying something to get someone out of trouble, and tattling is saying something to get someone into trouble. And so sometimes, and yes, sometimes your friends might be mad at you for telling, but in the long term, they're still your friends. Just this week, my friend Tia, when we were in high school, we were just talking about this week, but when we were in high school, my friend Tia decided to run away from home because she just got into an argument with her parents. She wanted out. And she couldn't drive yet, so she called me, Allison, I'm really mad at my parents. Can you come pick me up? And I need to get out of here. Okay. Do you have anything packed? Nope. Do you have any money? Nope. Clothes? Nope. Well, what do you have, Tia? I have 1 box of Captain Crunch cereal. Okay, now in my head, I'm thinking Tia's in over her head. And I don't know a lot about runaways when I'm 16. The stuff I know about now, it is much easier to find adults where you are right now to help solve problems that are happening at home or happening in your life than running and having a whole new layer of people who are trying to break your rules and do things to hurt you that we see with our runaway youth who are so endangered and targeted so often. I just knew that she was going to be hurt. So I drove her home. And she was mad at me for a couple of days. I told her mom, listen, do you want me to run, she wanted to run away and I just want to make sure she's okay. She was mad at me for a couple of days. We're still good friends now. And just this week, she's like, remember when I tried to run away from home with Captain Crunch cereal? I'm like, yes, I do. So we are still friends now as adults. And that's hard for young people to sometimes think about, but it's very important. What if games, there are a whole bunch of them on our website. Teenagers say that they like to play what if games when they're in the car. They don't have to make eye contact with their parents. And somehow making eye contact with the parents just makes it seem like you're bearing into their soul. Like, what if you're at a party and who have you been talking to? What's going on? Young kids need the what if sort of more in the moment. What if right now at this park, someone drove up and asked you to get in their car and give you a ride somewhere or give you ice cream? Okay, well, I don't get in the car without checking first. So I take 2 steps away. I say, I have to check first, and I come tell you someone's trying to give me ice cream. All right, great, And so the one I always do with the youth, I say, what if an older kid says they'll give you $5 if you play a secret game with them? And I almost always have someone say, well, I'd take the $5 and then I'd run away. And it's like, well, you are more important than $5. And if you go into their circle, into their bubble to get the $5, you haven't taken those 2 steps away. The first thing we always do is move away from something that's asking us to break our safety rule. But that's a hard one for them because $5 is a lot when you're 6. And keep doing what if scenarios with teens. If you ask, what if the person you're dating won't respect your boundaries, and you tell them about why that's something you worry about and what you would hope that they would do and how they could flag you and who are people they could ask for help, then if they're in that situation, it's never not been talked about. They can sort of have that. There are tons of wonderful books that can help parents have these conversations. We have our recommended reading books over here. They're also on our website. But the what if thing is so important to have those conversations beforehand so they know, oh, I have a what if I can't handle. I know I should go to my parents or the person taking care of me and ask. We're skipping the internet older kid stuff because this is the ECF feed. I want to end with just a few more resources, and that is we talk to young people all the time about going from bystanders to upstanders. And the bystander, upstander piece is so important because whenever we're preventing violence, we're always working with three groups. We're working with the person being targeted, and we work to harden the target. Okay, you're 8, you're being targeted. Here are some things that you should know that should help, but it should not rest on your shoulders. We work with the person who's doing the harming to say, you know, there are people who do amazing work with those who've already harmed and say, we're not going to do that again, here's what we're going to work on. So there are those two groups. But the third group, the group that has so much power, are the bystanders, people who are not directly impacted. And what we need to do is encourage our young people, if they see someone being targeted, to flag it for an adult or to offer the person being targeted some support in real life. You don't have to go after the person doing the hurting. You can just say to that person, listen, I know that they're being really mean to you online, and you don't deserve that, and you can hang out and eat lunch with my group of friends until this blows over. Just to offer support is so huge. This is an example from Central Kings Rural High School in Canada. A 9th grade boy came to the school the first day of school wearing a pink shirt. Not really a big deal, but some other 9th graders called him names, picked on him. They got into, you know, a bullying situation over this pink shirt. And these senior boys heard about it and they were really upset. This was their school. They'd created a school where you could be what you wanted to be. And we talk about hardening the target. It isn't fair to say don't wear pink to school. If he wants to wear pink to school, he can. And they were upset. They were not the person causing the trouble, and they were not the targeted person. They were the bystanders. And they decided to stand up. They went online. They made some phone calls. They went to Ragstock. And the second day of school, every senior showed up wearing pink. And this is what we're trying to channel when we're talking about sexual violence prevention. If you see something, say something. Sexual abuse exists in the darkness. You know, offenders thrive when no one's talking about this stuff. So on behalf of the kids, we need to turn on some lights and have some hard conversations. And say, if so, you know, just like at the airport, there's signs every time I travel. If you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. You do the same thing with parents. You know, hey, I was leaving our faith community and I saw one of the adult mentors had her hand on your son's upper leg, and I don't know if that's what's going on there, but I saw it. I inserted myself in the situation just to, you know, be an adult, and I told the person in charge of the program because I know they want to keep it safe, and I'm letting you know I saw this, it made me feel this way, so here's what I did. And that's a great formula. I mean, you're not putting yourself as the expert, you're not putting yourself as the, you know, investigator. You're saying, I saw this, it made me feel this way, here's what I did. And to start having some of those hard conversations, because it's the bystanders who can help us shine a light and to stand up on behalf of kids. So get involved. Connecting and caring parents are one of our #1 prevention strategies. You know, parents asking the hard questions, having their hard conversation. That family that always has the kids hanging out at their living room at the end of the school day. You know, there's a reason that certain kids feel safe in certain environments. And to say, if you ever need anything, let me know. Swing by your child's activities in their daily life. Introduce yourself to people who are working with your child in any capacity. Screen any of your caregivers carefully. You know, unannounced visits, supervise activities. Sign up to be one of the, you know, field trip parents at the school to get a sense of what the, you know, what the climate is, things like that. We need to remember that all genders have a voice in prevention. Prevention of sexual abuse is not a women's issue. It requires many voices working on these solutions. So we need to make sure that we invite more voices to the table. The interesting thing this year with all of the NFL cases with domestic violence and with child abuse is it's bringing a whole new voice to the table. We're having sports reporters call us with questions about child abuse. We're having people who are normally not the person invited to the table having really strong opinions. It's been a wonderful thing to remind people this is a problem that touches all genders, all races, all socioeconomic classes, all ethnicities. We need to unite on behalf of our kids. So the take-home steps as you're leaving tonight is have a family safety night. If you need to know how to do that, you can go to our website at www.jwrc.org. Have some of those connecting conversations. Use a book if you need to. We had the phenomenal book growing up called Where Do I Come From? About your body. Don't know if you had that book with the sperm and the top hat, if you know what I'm talking about. I didn't know this book was different from any other book in our library until my cousin spent the night. And Dad's like, what do you guys want to read tonight? And it's like, oh, where do I come from? Yeah, no. I don't know what Corey and Missy's moms taught them about their body. Let's skip and pick another book. And for me, it was like one more resource, one more book, pictures, things like that. So make personal safety, make body safety, make internet safety just something else that you talk about so they know they can go to you with their questions. And what if games. You'll have the right to say no to people. So let's talk about some of those examples where you can. With reporting, you're not often going to see actual child sexual abuse. What you'll see is a lot of boundary violations. And the danger is to say, well, I'm just going to file this away till later and wait until I see something that's actual abuse. Boundary violations is when we should really start to make some calls and let people know and flag things for folks in charge so that they can be aware before it turns into abuse, or if it is abuse, to prevent it from occurring. We celebrate bystander heroes at the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. Everything from the waiter in Colorado who was serving a couple their meal, and when the woman went to get food at the salad bar, he saw the guy putting something into her drink. He saw that and he just went and switched drinks. He said, oh yeah, they screwed up on your first drink. Here's a new drink. And he said the look that he got from that guy gave his uh-oh feel. He called it his gut instinct. Made his gut go off, and he called law enforcement. They came and tested it, and the person was drugging her drink. And they were in an online dating situation, and that's just a waiter saying, this, I'm a bystander, but this seems wrong. I see this, makes me feel this way, so this is what I'm going to do. To the burglars, 2 Octobers ago in California, CNN reported that 2 burglars were robbing electronics from a cul-de-sac, and they got to one of the houses, and the computers they stole had hundreds of images of child porn on it. And these guys didn't know what to do, and it said in CNN, one of the burglars first called his mom. His mom said, you need to call police. I would have loved to be the dispatch operator handling that call. You get this call, hey, so we have some laptops here. That's not important. The important part is they're from this address. These are the pictures on it. And if burglars who know that they are going to be, basically saying this was me who stole it, and they're willing to do that on behalf of kids, what's our excuse? Dr. King said our lives begin to end on the day we become silent about the things that matter. I believe kids matter. And I believe it's up to us to be aware of these things and to have the awkward conversation that you might have, or make the report that's hard to make, because that child is counting on us to do that. Additional resources, everything from Demand the Change for Children, which is a Minnesota initiative about getting upstream of the problem of sexual violence. Like, for example, the Halloween costumes, selling Halloween costumes to kids as young as 5 of a pimp. What does a 5-year-old boy wearing a Halloween costume of a pimp think about sexual violence? And so to say, oh, I feel uncomfortable you're selling this costume. Can we have a conversation? So it's about changing our culture to be a safer place for kids. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has wonderful resources, both for after if something happens and beforehand when it comes to prevention. Minnesota Department of Health has a sexual violence prevention website, and they send out quarterly emails with trainings, discussions, new articles, sort of once a quarter of what's happening in the state when it comes to prevention. And then NetSmarts is a phenomenal website about internet safety for parents and kids. Plenty of book resources, including one of my children's books, I Can Play It Safe, and Gavin DeBecker's book, Protecting the Gift, and they're all on our recommended reading sheet. There's a lot of ways you can support the work of the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center, from liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, joining our mailing list. There's a sign-in sheet here if you're interested in being in our mailing list. Donating to the cause. 60% of the speaking events that we give are done at free or reduced cost. So we want to make sure that the information gets out there. So 60% of the time it's donors that are allowing us to provide this information. Just taking a brochure and passing it along to people in your faith community or your neighborhood or your scouting troop, spreading that education and catching people doing good. I always love when kids hold doors open for me at the restaurant. And I make thank you for doing that and giving the attention, affection for positive ways. So we're really good at catching kids not doing the right thing. We need to do a better job of catching them doing good things. And then this is my contact information at my office in Minneapolis. So if you ever need to reach me or any of my colleagues, you can go to www.jwrc.org to do so. So any questions as we wrap up our evening together? Yes?
One of the things I struggle with, or I'm torn about, is
So the question is, how do we invite men to the table as part of the solution?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, you know, one of the things that we always say is find a mom with kids.
Mhm.
Dad with kids. So
Yeah, it's tricky because we know statistically mom with kids is their best bet. But I think we need to do a better job of engaging men in prevention because, you know, if heterosexual men are the most likely group to hurt other people when it comes to sexual violence, let's get heterosexual men and all people who have grown up where they haven't hurt a person and would never think of hurting a person, get them around the table and say, what worked? How can we replicate this? What was helpful to you growing up? What messages did you hear? Because it's not, I mean, just looking at one element, like looking at pornography, for example. The average age kids are seeing porn, if you're a boy, it's 11. And if you're a girl, it's 14. And so if young men are seeing these toxic images, and I'm not saying, I realize porn is a big spectrum, but the stuff that is accessible and free to kids that they're typing in, I mean, my friend's son typed in butts because he's 8 and butts are really interesting. And then the videos that come up, it's like, oh my, you know, when they're seeing these images before they're even holding hands or kissing somebody, what does that do to their brain? What does that do the first time that they really like somebody? And are they going to, if I worry about when porn is the only sex ed that a child might be getting, because no one wants to have this conversation about their bodies, but then they're accessing these images that they can't talk to anyone about. I mean, we need all genders at the table for prevention, and it is tricky because we do, you know, when we say, yeah, look for a mom with kids, we're doing that because statistically it's their best bet. But we need a member of those 5 adults to be representing different genders. Because young women need to hear from men what they deserve in a relationship. Young men need to hear from men what is the expectation when it comes to if someone has set a limit. It's not just about teaching kids to say no. It's about teaching kids to stop when they hear no. You know, and to have some of those hard conversations. And having those conversations with a male can go a really long way. You know, one of the youth in my life who I mentor, I was not getting anywhere with him with a certain topic, and I asked another adult in our program who happens to be of the same gender to say, can you have this conversation? And it went very differently, and it was proactive and it was positive, and he felt that connection and was able to move in a healthier direction. So I think, yes, we need to do a lot better job of inviting everyone to the table and encouraging people to help us create what is healthy, because we have a long way to go. Yeah, great question. Any other questions? This is a lot of information, a little bit under an hour. So hopefully this gives you at least 1 or 2 action steps to take as you head out of here. And don't hesitate to come up and grab some brochures. And if you have questions, I'll hang out till everyone's gone. So thank you very much.